We're live.
What is going on?
Who all is in the house? Well, forever ago, we had Lars and Auto Salvage Outlaws, Big Block 402 Steven. How's it going? Hey, I got a notification that I'm live. Check that out.
Tunnel Red Mafia.
That's right. Kim Fixes Things, Mexican Spec, Frankenstein C20, Joseph Davis, welcome. Pure Pontiac Garage in Wrong English. Useful Entertainment says, I like to sniff trees. Okay.
All right.
My mom and my Aunt Nancy are here.
Hey, y'all.
Tall Garage. Cool. Well, I think most of you guys know our guest here, Andy Wood. We're doing a back-to-back live tonight, which the reason that wound up happening is even though Friday is planned, I discovered here a few weeks ago, and it had jogged my memory that I had a February 29th live with Unfinished Project. So yesterday, people kept dropping in saying, oh, hey, is it Friday? I'm like, no, Friday we have the Andy Wood. Robert Magny is here, Mopar's Mustangs and Minivans, Useful Entertainment, Andrew Nelson. Good evening from the Pennsylvania contingent, he says. Rob's Rods and Street Cars. Mean Street Mopar, Twisted Mopar Garage. Well, hello, folks. Big Block 402 says, hit that thumbs up. It's free. It's free just for a little bit of putting up with us.
It's not working. You know what's not working?
What's that?
Ain't nobody said nothing about the hat yet.
No, not yet. They will. Nothing gets by these people. Nothing. In fact, I have a plan. I want to rearrange in the studio, but I don't want to completely change it until I got it done, if that makes sense. I'm going to move everything this way and have some room in front of me, like with a work table. And then I have a Casper-matic sign like that that'll be up. But I'm not doing it until I can go straight to the long format because I don't want it to look under construction for weeks, right?
Right.
So anyway, I have a Casper-matic sign like Andy's. And people will be like, oh, man, look, there's a brush stroke with Wilburns. It's different on Andy. They'll notice everything eventually.
I have to say, man, that sign is pretty awesome. You know
it is, isn't it?
Oh, man, bad hair day.
Hand painted. Andrew Nelson likes the hat. Big Block 402. You know what, Andy? I should have worn my boonie hat today. That's what I should have done. My boonie hat, you can see it in my Swap Meet Survival Guide from Carlisle.
This here, I take this still in motion with me and walk around, man. Keep my ears from getting burned.
You had the boonie hat on when we had our ill-fated trip to Tennessee years back.
Yeah, I sure did. It was a different one, but yeah, same thing.
Unfinished Project. He says he has a Casper hat.
Sweet.
I don't yet have a Casper hat.
I don't have one either.
Isn't that great?
I don't have.
All right, Bad Tree Blake is here.
All right. I see outfits.
Yeah, Mean Street Mopar. I see Joe trolling his videos. I am too. He's starting to get it rolling for the season. So we're looking to see Mean Street Ken making his charge to 500.
That is awesome.
Big Block 402's daughter is already swiping his Casper swag. That's cool. Turbo Tom. Russell from Outfits, Max Wedge, Dick Dastardly. I saw Colleen in here. She said she couldn't stay tonight. I understand, but thank you for saying hi. The NSB guys are here, apparently, as Robert says. One-Eyed Cat said that everyone remember to take their PM meds tonight. Well, thanks for that public service announcement, but I have no meds for anything.
Yeah.
Just Mopar Joe in the house. Cool. This was one of those days, it's like a rainy day. Everybody kind of slid in a few minutes later, just the way it is.
I don't know how it is up your way, but, man, it's been pouring down rain all day here.
Yeah. Joseph Davis says Sleeper 408 here. Cool.
Oh, yeah. GM crate motor, Target 350.
I hear that. Wendy English's Casper Dodge van. They had a Dodge van they nicknamed Casper. Wound up going to the demo derby, I believe, Buffalo Bryant. But he won with it.
That's pretty cool. What? That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome.
Buffalo Bryant may be here. But anyway, we we wanted to have a live with Andy Wood. And, as you guys know, there's been a lot of chatter here in the last week about what happened with the Mission. Yeah, that's an understatement. The Mission Impossible 318 build. And if you notice on the thumbnail, that's a scene from the movie Mission Impossible. But getting away from, all of the various, internet drama surrounding the build itself, I think it'd be interesting to get into what all of you guys and what Andy thinks and what everyone thinks about what is a stock build and what is not. That sounds like a really simple question till you think about it. Look at all the debate we've had about what is a street car, right?
Oh, yeah. And it goes on forever and ever and ever. And, one thing I bring up, I don't know how many of you guys keep up with this stuff, but like in the Coyote world, the world was just lit on fire. Brent LaSalle and his turbo Mustang went 622 at 227 miles an hour, has a stock block, stock crank in it, stock heads, it's been CNC, but people are saying it ain't a stock block because it has sleeves in it. You see what I'm saying?
Well, okay. So the definition of stock, I think that's a great place to start because I've given this a lot of thought. And when people say use the word stock, I think they conflate the word stock in production when maybe they shouldn't.
Right? Yeah, there's a difference between OE originality and stock, I guess you'd say, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I think what my interpretation is that the original Mission Impossible 318 build was that you use all production parts. In other words, parts that came off an assembly line and installed on a production vehicle for daily driver or whatever use in the 70s. Production parts, right? You could do anything you wanted to them, but they had
to have factory part numbers on them.
Right. So by that, yes, I think that's a very simple mission. I get that. Now, something I mentioned to Andy earlier is if that is your definition, how far can you deviate that and why would you? Hey, there's Charlie Servito. How's it going, man? Glad you could make it.
Hey, Charlie.
So we're trying to iron out, and this is all just kind of a round table topic. I'm going to talk with Andy. You guys can chime in with what you think.
Oh, yeah.
So production, is it production or stock? And so let's say, I told Andy, I said, if this mission had been the idea in, say, 1994 instead of 2024, and we'd had 30 years elapse, yeah, I think that makes it considerably easier than when the parts are 50 and 60 years old.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now what we do is, let's say that the parts are more scarce and it's considerably harder to use all production pieces. Then the question becomes, how much allowance do you have for replacement parts? So in other words, when do we blur the line between a factory service replacement, which can be aftermarket, and aftermarket that maybe isn't, or slightly different, right? So just a small example of that. If you can, let's say you have to take a production crank to honor the production crank and you turn it 30 over, okay? You can use a service replacement, rod bearing, for example, right? Okay, well, now you don't have a production part, but people say, well, that's still stock because it's a service replacement. Okay, but if you offset grind the crank 30 over, you're still using a production crank. Now it isn't 318 cubic inches anymore. Now it's 320.8. So where are we okay with blurring the line between production and service replacement versus aftermarket? Where is that line? Because in my opinion, like that camshaft that Rodney Bird put toward the build,
Mm-hmm.
it was 318
Stock is
cheater cam, but it still it wasn't a production part.
right.
I talked with Professor P about what could you do with a factory 318 cam on a regrind. And then again, you'd be using a production part that came in a factory engine
Yeah,
that
and
you'd
that
be
was part of
modifying.
our original talks.
Right.
Regrinding factory cam.
So he says the factory LSA on that is 112 to 114.
Yeah.
There are some tall garage that hate to be that. No, you don't. You like to be that guy, Ken. But the question seems pretty moot. No, this is a theoretical thing. We're just trying to flesh this out. Don't forget. Don't worry about that build. You can watch that build on that channel. You can watch Andy build on his channel. What we're doing is trying to figure out where is that line blurred, because it's not that cut and dry.
If I was to take and bore the block and just put a stock replacement piston in it, say from a Keith Black Silverlight, that's technically stock replacement, but it's not stock. You see what I'm saying?
So Turbo Tom says when the cubic inches is changed, it's no longer factory.
Okay.
Okay, but you can change the cubic inches with a production crank, a production rod, and a service replacement bearing.
Yeah.
You can get almost 3 more cubic inches just doing that.
And two, once you bore the block, because you got to remember, you're talking a 50-year-old engine core. It might have crazy amounts of taper in the cylinder wall. You're going to have to bore it, which changes the displacement of the engine.
So the deal is with the crank, I know that Andy has a build going. Uncle Tony will have a build going. I don't know what the basis of that is. I don't know. I know that Two Hacks Jeff has a 318 build going, and Just Mopar Joe will have a 318 build going. And so what I think is that between and I've got a 318 thing too that's been waiting in the weeds, but that'll be another time after all of these. But everybody's going to have a different angle on this, so it will be something to see.
Yes, Charlie, we still need a steel crank. And there you go.
Well, this ties in with what we were saying earlier. Charlie says cylinders must be straight or it will use oil and detonate itself to death. Again, if you have to use production stuff, what are you going to do? Take a 318 block out of the Cosmoline? I mean, we're talking 40, 50 years old.
Yeah, good luck finding that.
Right. So this is all relative. It's a thought experiment. So I've looked at the various comments that have been left on the Mission Impossible 318
Which
thing.
have been a lot.
I have never in my life. I'll tell you what. I guarantee you that there are more, fail horn style comments under Andy's video than he's ever had in his entire life.
But that's part of it, buddy.
Oh man! But the thing is, I agree with the simplicity of the original mission statement. Production parts, 1 horsepower per cubic inch. However, I think that as time has gone on, there are so many more cost-effective, labor-effective, easier to find even options now than there would have been if half the time had gone by on these parts.
See, and let me give you my thought process of where all this stuff is going. Charlie has done a tremendous amount of work on those 675 castings. And I may be wrong, but I think that's probably the lowest production or lowest of the barrel 318 head. It's definitely not a 302 head, 302 casting. But So even with the airflow that he has got, when you're doing stuff like this and you're limited, the BBD is ultimately the limiting factor of the deal. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Yeah, Charlie says the heads are horrible. And see, that's another Andrew saying crank is a crank. You know,
I
go to
tend to
any
agree
car
with that.
show, go to any car show, any concours restoration, and show me a standard bore block in those cars, unless it
Okay.
was a time capsule.
So here's another one. We're just talking about the cam.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you do on production parts? You've got the factory stamped steel rocker arms, which are pretty close to 1.5 to 1, right?
Not the
Okay.
stamp steels. They're more like 1.4 if you want to
Yeah,
measure
it's
them out,
it's it's
which
okay. But the
is
thing
horrible.
is, if you're limited to a production camshaft,
Hmm.
and the most you're going to get out of that is maybe 30 more degrees advertised duration on a regrind, right? About.
All
You
right.
can't really tighten the load separation up much.
No.
Do you go to this enormous amount of man hours of work that people aren't even going to see or appreciate to modify the ratio of the rockers? I mean, this is the kind of stuff you're talking about. You're going to get hundreds of hours in an engine that isn't really going to have much marketability when you're done.
Yeah, and I mean, unless you are building a stock eliminator engine where you've got to keep certain part numbers for things to be legit, there's a reason why those engines are extremely expensive for what they are.
Indeed, there are. Yeah, Hoosier, the 318 cam. I asked Professor P what you could get out of that, and he said you're looking at about 30 degrees more duration. He also told me something I
And
didn't
that's way
realize.
bigger. And John, let's just be clear, that's way more
Oh,
duration
yeah,
than that
that's not
heater.
trivial on that cam.
Yeah. And but you talking about the cam that Rodney Bird sent, that's way more than that, probably. I don't know what the advertised is on a stock 318 cam. Probably like what, 210,
Yeah, if I was thinking it's about
220.
208, the lift
No,
on a
it might be close.
318 cam is around 390 lift.
Well, that
And
cam that he sent is 390 lift, 240, 250 advertised duration on a 107.
right. Well, but again, so that's something that Polito was telling me is that some of the industrial 318 applications used a tighter LSA than the cars.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those cams were ground on something like, 108, 110,
I did not
108, and
know that.
106. I didn't either. I had no idea. But he said some of them were. But again, if you're mixing parts from that 318, again, where does the line between production end and not? That's I think a good question. And how far can you go with factory service parts? Because Max Wedge Dick Dastardly has a good point here. What's 30 thousandths bore over a 318? Well, I think it's about 5. You're around 323 or 322.8. So are
Yeah.
you saying that 30 thousandths over factory service replacement, 30 over pistons are okay for this build? And now we're at 323. We just had somebody else say once the cubic inches changes, it's no longer 318. So where is that line?
Well, you know what I've learned through this entire past week and a half is
What's
that you cannot make everyone happy.
You
You
can't.
never will.
Nope.
No matter what, even going back, let's go back to mixed up boss. I remember seeing comments, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? You know, in the end, it was like, okay, this is what I wanted. And I just let the pieces fall. But since this project has a lot of exposure, people feel like, that their input should have a huge say into the outcome of the build.
Joe says, he and Ed's Machine talked about a good 340 cam. Well, sure, use a 68 340 cam for a manual transmission, but what's production about that? Now we're using parts from other engines.
Yeah.
I mean, there really is no. I get what Tony's saying, and if you could get all new old stock parts, and you valued your time at the value of the experiment, I think that's fine. I think that's fine to do, but that's a lot of hours to put into that, using a lot of parts that are kind of tougher to find than you think. Like Andy said, you're gonna have a whole lot less money in a set of rods than all the work.
As Charlie, if you're still in here, put in here how many hours you think you have in those cylinder heads.
That's a great question.
Because at some point you got to say this is not practical. It goes back to the video that I did. You've got practical, common sense, and money.
This is a good point too. Joe brings up $2,000 in machining. Machining is, let me tell you, the invoice on machining, you can get confused with the machinist's phone number now.
Exactly. And especially when you talk about offset ground and the crank and doing all this crazy decking work. Not only that, but once you start decking the block and the heads to the extreme, you're killing the integrity of the parts.
So,
whoa.
Yeah, I think that's,
Whoa.
I was going to guess he had over 100 hours in it.
So, okay. Now, let's assume that you're paying someone to do this.
Oh.
Could you imagine the bill that would be involved with that? Think about that.
I can't. It's astronomical. And then Ken says that he just had a crank ground at $820.
Bingo.
So that's the whole point. Is I think that the whole idea of all production pieces and see what you can get out of all production pieces is a great idea. But how good of production pieces do you have now? And how many people are going to say that juice is worth that squeeze? I think it's a good thought experiment, but I think its practicality has really fallen off over the last, so many years as those parts have gotten more and more, have gotten a lot more and more age, more and more wear, and new stuff has made this cheaper and easier. And I just think that the stuff that Andy's looking at doing has more practicality than a lot of people
we
would
have
put
to
into
get
the
as much
318.
compression in that engine as possible for it to do anything. So here I'm going to kind of give you a rundown, because I actually talked to Greg Finnegan a little bit when he was on David's Live, and kind of going over this, trying to get it wrapped in my head as what we're going to do on the dyno with this engine. Okay. So the initial plan is dyno it in that stock configuration with a BBD. In fact, since we're going to be using a hydraulic flat tappet cam, I'm going to buy one of those Amazon BBDs and break it in with a carburetor that's not been butchered, and that I know that I won't kill the camshaft while we're trying to get it to run right. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So then once we get our numbers with the all stock parts, throw just a simple single 4-barrel intake. I'd love to get like a LD 4B, because it has the 318 size runners and just like a 600 CFM carburetor. See what that does. All right. Then take the manifolds off and put set of headers on. So, I'm thinking about this in terms of practicality on the dyno as well. Things that I can do. And then once we get those numbers, then we can really rip the engine apart, swap cams, put a real intake manifold on it, headers, and see what those heads will do. And I am hoping that we can get somewhere around 480 with those heads that Charlie has ordered. With you know what I'm saying?
I'm anxious to see somebody do that exact experiment, but like I said, I'm anxious to see it. I don't think really anybody wants to do that exact experiment. I
No,
really don't. Because if somebody wanted to, they would have by now. I just don't think when it comes right down to it, to use all production parts and put all of those hours in it to see if they can get a horsepower per cubic inch. I think that everybody who's actually sat down with parts in their hand and money and time ahead of them have said no.
that's exactly right.
So anyway, I thought, yeah, I thought it would be interesting to explore the reason why somebody may or may not want to use production parts. And I think that the time for that is probably 30 years behind us.
I can agree to that 100%.
I mean, I love 318 stuff more than most people, but that's just kind of what I think.
Right.
Yeah. But that said, all right, so we've moved up to 2024 in the realm of practicality.
Yes.
So where are you with saying, okay, we're going to do things in a practical way with the more replicable budget? Start off, tell us, where are the places you think are the absolute best value for the money to keep the cost down? Like for example, one great example you gave is you can get a set of rods for $400.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Or you can pay that $820 to have the crank offset ground.
Exactly. So there's a perfect place where it actually makes more budget sense.
Yeah.
Or you can go get your crank that doesn't exist off the shelf that has the offset ground, but no one has that. Who has that?
Yeah.
That's the point. Okay, so what are your thoughts on that? Where are the best places to get that budget if somebody were to try something similar to this?
I don't know. I'll have a better idea of that once I'm actually putting this thing together. And then once I lay my hands on it, then that's when my brain can think, okay, well, we're doing it this way. It would be more practical and cost conscious to do it in this particular way.
Well, Maxwell is already saying pistons.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm thinking Magnum 318 bottom end. Find a low mileage one. If you're wanting to keep a 318.
So now we can use production parts out of other production engines, according to that, right?
Yeah.
Well, now you've opened it up to maybe use the 302 318 heads, right?
Yeah.
Can we now use a 318 roller cam? You see where there's really no end to this. It all depends on how
there's not. Because then what you have done is shifted, okay, where we was building, say, an early 70s 318, it's now totally different.
You see, I mean, this is all in the eye of the beholder. So I think in the long run, this project splitting up and so many people doing their own version is going to wind up being good for all the viewers.
Well, I know one thing. When it's all said and done, the price of 318s will be going up. Okay. I mean, honestly, I will expect to see you'll see more power out of this 318 than most people get with their 3060 builds, the average person.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay, Tony. So now we can use a 318 Magnum block. Look how far in a half hour this conversation has morphed. Mm-hmm. From production to now using the 318 Magnum. Okay, so now what about using the 318 poly block and bore it to a 4-inch or bigger bore?
Oh, we can make it a true 340.
Yeah, there's no end to it once you start doing this. That's the
Yeah.
whole point of the conversation is there really isn't any point. I get the original idea. I just think that the practicality really drifts away.
Charlie's saying it will hurt feelings with 675 heads. That's a fact.
I don't doubt that, but look at the time you've got in them.
Yeah.
NSB, I can make that happen for you. Hoosier says take a 440 and sleeve it to make a 3.
Better yet, just get the 440 and put a 318 air cleaner on it and put 318 on
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I think it's just the whole thing is just, think about it. I think in the end, people are all going to see what challenge somebody's willing to do. And
Yeah.
I think that the viewers will be well served.
Charlie's
That's what I
saying,
think.
post his comment.
And Stephen, if you do a 305 build off, you are going to see exactly the same thing. Where are your lines? Who does what? You'll see the same thing. And Turbo Tom says it's not a 318. I agree with you, but the point is it's not literally what it is. It's what people want to do with it. I agree. I agree. Look at a car show. Look at how many people you can't really get to agree on the purest definitions of things. Right?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my gosh. Well, but the difference is there, Hoosier, is with those guys, look at how much that's a lot of clicks and views and subs and everything just getting them to play. That is what offsets a lot of the hundreds and hundreds of hours that would go into such a thing. But again, not necessarily nonsense. I mean, if you think about it, there are people that go for all kinds of records and challenges that most of us will never understand. Look at the guy from India that grew fingernails that were 5 feet long. I mean, what practical reason was that? But you know what? Some people have a challenge and they're determined to see it. And I get that. There's a certain respect for that. I get that. So, listen, I love the 318.
I think the 318 is probably Mopar's most underappreciated engine, really.
I would agree with that.
I mean, I know the slant, but here's the thing. The Slant 6 has this cult following. People know the reliability of a Slant 6. There's no doubt.
Yeah, by the way, I'll let everybody know. Andy's watching his time. He's got to take a break at halftime to run and take care of some business and can swing back in. However, that said, we wanted to kind of explore this whole idea with you guys about what is production, what is stock. So you guys in the chat, what are your thoughts on this? When you hear a stock engine, because I hear all kinds of guys to drag, well, it's got to stock this and stock that. Then you get to talking about them, and 10 minutes later, you found out there's nothing stock about that.
Well, just go to any forum or Facebook group about LS. They talk about stock bottom end
all the time.
All the time. It's a contentious word. It's been like that for 75, 80 years.
One of the things that I think is funny here too, we look at all these varying opinions on using production stuff. So one of our buddies, over at the tractor's farm, I guess you'd say, has his entire world's identity wrapped up in he has a 340. And so therefore he is more enlightened than everyone doing anything with 318 and scoffs at the idea. And I get that, man. But, look at what people want for 340s at swap meets now. I have 3 340s, Mr. Swinger. I still like the challenge of doing stuff with a 318. So it's all about the challenge we want. We're very blessed to live in the first world in 2024 America and can pursue these things because they're there, right? I mean, we're not having to go out and hunt for our survival every day so that we can do things like play with a 318. But it's what challenge do we choose? That's the question.
Honestly, if we're talking practical, I think it's so much easier to find a Magnum 318 than it is an earlier version 318. You know what
It
I'm
is
saying?
now. If
It
this
is.
was 30 years ago, you'd make
Yep,
the case for the LA engine.
that's exactly right.
Marty, no, there's one of them who does in his mind, but for everybody else, yes, you're right.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's a small bore 340. I mean, it's the same exact stroke. I mean, 3.31 inch, you know, uh, there's really no difference.
No, I mean I get it. It all depends what you're doing, and from a basis for which to make a build, it's 130 thousandths a bore. I
Hmm.
get that. I get that. But again, it's what challenge do you want? What can you get from a 318 for the cost, and they're not worrying about a factor. If you build a 340 and then you go spin it to the moon, have fun, and blow it up, well, now there's one less 340 in the world, and your wallet isn't going to care for replacing. You're not just going to go to a junkyard and get one.
Yeah, but so if I'm going to the junkyard and I'm going to buy a Magnum 318, why not get the Magnum 360?
Now you're leaning into the whole thing. And the
You
reason
know?
why not get the 360? Well, that was a different question 10 and 20 and 30 years ago than it is now.
Bingo. Max Wedge, I would love to talk about that. Stock eliminator legal until I changed the cam last. So be curious to have his take on it.
And then there's, the 318 is not necessarily just a smaller engine that varies by make, as Andrew Nelson says. Yes, this is true.
Right.
Useful entertainment. You're exactly right. That's why we
Bingo.
don't go down this rabbit hole every day. There's a reason why.
And that's the
Yes,
that's the problem.
you're exactly right. That is it. You got it. But
I
I think,
really didn't know that a 318 could cause that much controversy.
oh, no. But, hey, I get
know?
it. 360 is very cost effective for power. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
But it's not the challenge here.
No. But then you have 340, the 340 crowd and the 360 crowd. Which is better, the 340 or 360?
To all of the old guys sitting on a 340 who have one, they'll tell you they are.
Right.
I mean, I have all three. Okay. And it's not like, one is the way and the truth and the only one way. No, they're all interesting individual challenges.
Well, if all things were equal, the 360 is going to make more power.
So you now have a blank slate, and Joe is saying 360 is greater than 340. Oh,
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who will make that case, and in stock form, you're
the
probably
only
right.
thing I don't like about the 360 is the increased main bearing size.
Yeah,
I wish
exactly.
it still had the 340 mains, but whatever.
That's about the only real difference if you think about it.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So you've got a blank slate. What direction are you wanting to take a 318 build for Project Bad Intentions?
I want, at the end of the day, whoever ends up with this engine, I want it to be something that they're proud to have and something that's going to be reliable as an anvil and something that will go out and kick butt in somebody's street car if they take it to the drag strip, whatever. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about the person who's going to actually be driving this engine.
Well, if you went all the way with all production 318 parts, you're probably going to do things that affect the engine's longevity.
Bingo.
And all of that. And so that's another concern that we haven't even talked about. We're just talking about, can you get a peak number on the dyno? We're not talking about how long it would live or what kind of street banners and whatnot.
Well, here's the thing, and I talked about it in my video a little bit. At one time, when we cut the 318 head in two, we were looking at shaving enough off the head to completely eradicate the open chamber and basically take that casting and make it a closed chamber head.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a thin deck.
Not only that, but then it messes with your push rod length. It messes, more importantly, getting intakes to fit. Okay. So anytime you majorly deck a block or majorly deck heads or the both, we're gonna have one intake to fit this thing, and that's gonna be it.
Oh, old McDonald, I have one of those engines. That's even worse. You're not going to inspire people to do this in their driveway, not with that.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I would love to build a 273. I think they're
Yeah,
super cool, but not for nothing like this.
right. Yeah. At the end of the day, I think that Mexican Spec says, he says, rules are made to be broken. I
Well,
get that.
no, Tony kept saying the word intentions in his video. The thing about intentions are they can change. How I feel about something today might not be how I feel about it tomorrow once I've been enlightened to different aspects of what I'm dealing with. Does that make sense? I see slant
Useful
Taylor in
entertainment.
here.
Useful entertainment. No, it is not, because 273s running 283s, you could spend years on them and never get them running. If you know, you know. But no,
But
so I'm anxious to see it. So do you know what block you're going to start with, Andy?
it's going to be an early block.
An early block. Okay. So you're going to do a solid, or you're going to do a flat tap it.
Starting out, it's going to be flat tap it. Like I said, Rodney Bird special. That camshaft, because I just want to see what it does.
Have you thought about using an 85 to 91 block so that you can run either?
Well, I have thought about that, and I know that they're pretty strong, but I like the thick. Well, I'm curious about one thing. DV's got a sonic tester. I've always heard how thick the early 318 blocks are. I'm going to sonic test it to
When
see.
you say early, Professor P Sonic checked a bunch of these one time, and he
Well,
says the
good. He
thickest
saved me a
ones.
bunch of time then.
Yeah, he said that the thickest ones are the ones that were roller cam compatible that could
Really?
have come with a. Yeah, he said the 85 to 91 are the thickest blocks to start with.
I did not know
I
that.
would never have thought
I
that.
would have lost a bet on that.
Well, see, I know the Paulies like the thickest block in the whole world or whatever, but I'll say that Polito did a bunch of these. So he's in here if he wants to talk about what he checked and the scope of what he checked. But he did several.
And another thing is, like in my mind, I have a crazy mind, John. Look, I come up with mixed up balls, but in my mind, I'm sitting here visualizing this final version of the engine. I'm thinking like an early 70s looking modified production motor that's spinning to the moon and making some killer power doing it. That's what I'm thinking. Rocking an Edelbrock TR5 tunnel ram. Yes, that's what I want to see. Charlie's going to be coming up to DV's here in the next few days. So I'm sure we'll have a better. Whoa.
Yeah, what did the thickness wind up being on that?
Whoa. I would have never guessed that. The hybrid block was the thickest. There you go. So, Shane, we need to talk. I need to get you on a live chat or something. I need my own special Professor P input on making this thing. Oil and mods I need to do for a lot of RPMs.
Professor P's got a recipe for that.
I know he does. I've heard it, but I want to see, and that's the beauty about this community thing here is sharing knowledge. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
I think if there's one thing I can say that's been positive through my YouTube experience is shared knowledge. Yeah, I'll give you a call.
Max Wedge, the 360 in '89 was flat tappet, but you could have a roller block, which that one should have been. It was just running flat tappet lifters. It probably still had the threaded bosses in the lifter valley and the tall lifter bores.
Mm.
Old McDonald has a question. Can the average home engine builder do their own magnaflexing or sonic testing?
If you do one engine every 10 years, no, it's not worth doing that. You know, but if you're an avid enthusiast, I'll say it like that, then probably yes.
Yeah, I was looking at sonic testers at PRI, and that is interesting. It's an investment.
Right. Well, and not only that, but you can take what you have to the machine shop and have them sonic it, you know, and that's something that didn't used to be expensive. I don't know what it is these days, but everything's going up
now. Don, we can hone the cylinders ourselves. How we hone them is another question. And they really need to be straight.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. If I'm putting something together, I'm a firm believer, pay once, be done with it. You know, just do it right to start with. If it has a ton of taper, nah, you're not going to get that right.
Now, Levi, I think this is because this is exactly what
this is the LS stuff I'm telling you about, stock bottom end.
Okay, Levi, are you going to have that same definition once that engine's been out of production for 30 years?
The answer to that is no.
But that's not how people think. So you can have that definition now because that LS is made every day, and you can find a low mileage one in the junkyard. But you can't do that with a 318. You cannot do it.
You can take a high mileage one and do some killer stuff with it, but that's besides the point. You know, used to 100,000 miles was a death sentence on a car. You know what I'm saying? Now, not so much.
Yeah. Unfinished Project says that the Amazon Sonic Checker is $200. Charlie says a good one is $1,200, and that's more. Again, it depends what you're doing.
What brand do you have, Charlie? Is it a Drake or what? I think that's the name.
Yeah, Levi, it's 25 years old, close enough, but there's two things I'm going to remind you about. A lot of this 318 stuff we're talking about is 50 years. The LA engine itself is 60 years old this year.
Dakota, yeah, that's right. That's what
that's already that. Also, this modern stuff, the low tension rings and all. I mean, look at how much better the cylinders look in these Magnums and in these late model engines and LSs. You can pop the heads with 150,000 miles, and they're all still nice and cross hatched with no ridge.
Bingo.
The older engines wouldn't do that. So again, where's the practicality when everything?
Let me tell you a story. Me and my buddy Josh Haynes, we go to pull apart. We pull a Lincoln Mark 8 4-valve 4.6, 280,000 miles. Take a pressure washer to it, put it in the car, and put 150 shot on it, and we go run 690 7.0s. No problem. 280,000 miles running like And he ran it like that for another 6-7 years.
And a lot of the fuel injected engines, they're not puking gas down the cylinders, causing more wear for years and years, like a lot of carbs will do.
Bingo.
So yeah, there's a lot to that too.
Oils have gotten better. There's a lot of things have changed.
But now this stuff has moved in and become far more practical for the driveway builds.
Absolutely.
I'm just reminding Andy of his time because we talked about his halftime. So I'm watching the clock for you, Andy. You
How
do
much
what
have
you
I got?
need to do. What's that?
How much more time do I have?
You're at 8:50.
Good. I got another about 5 minutes.
Okay. So we'll come back and revisit this, but I thought it would be a good topic of discussion because I was curious how our chat felt about what is production, how much allowance for service replacement, how much allowance for aftermarket, because it's not like there's one hardcore definition that is necessarily the best.
Well, I realized that we were in trouble right after the first few videos when I noticed that people were saying it's got to have the stock piston, stock everything in it to be considered stock. Then that's when I was thinking, man, no one's going to be happy with this.
I actually agree with Levi. I think that once anything has changed, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it doesn't mean,
that it's going to make more power. It means that
No.
it's not OE original anymore. It's not stock.
Right. I mean, and you can say something's stock except it has some service replacement parts or whatever. So there's varying definitions here. A lot of people are getting wrapped up around this, assuming that everyone has the same interpretations of things, and they clearly do not.
Here's one for you. What about the Mopar engines that come factory with overbore?
Right. And like they have like the little Maltese cross or all those
Bingo.
things they put on there. Again, what if you get one of those? It's not even that many cubic inches to start with.
Yeah.
So I get that, Levi. I get that. My whole point here is that there's a lot of different ways a person can look at this, and to say that one is right, may not be true because there's a lot of considerations. I think it's more time and more expense to use everything factory if you're determined to get those results.
Right.
So is it an
my brother
experiment behind us? Probably.
Yeah. Did I see my brother's name
Yeah,
pop
I
up?
saw the blue collar keto cook,
Heck
Steve.
yeah. Hey, brother.
How you doing, sir?
Mexican spec. That's
Well, there
exactly
are, and then there's service replacement stuff too. So there's just a lot of ways to look at this. That's the whole point.
You look at it this way, then you turn it over and look at it that way.
Talking about quality control, I mean, the quality of castings today is amazingly better than it was in say the 70s. Oh my gosh, it's not even close.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, now Stephen brings up an interesting point. What if you drag direct connection into it? That's factory parts. Of course, none of it is production in the car that was driven every day, but it's factory parts.
What if you go find an LD4B that's got a Chrysler part number on it?
I've got a Chrysler 340 intake, LD340 intake right there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of that. I've actually figured there's ways you can really get a lot of power out of all factory parts if you mismatch them all in different stuff.
Yeah.
You can put 340 340 pistons in a 360 block, machine a little bit of relief for the spark plug, and get something like 12-to-1 compression, 368 inches. So you've used production pistons and a production block crank and rods and gotten a huge amount of compression and 368 inches. But they weren't produced together.
Yeah.
So how do people feel about that?
Maybe Outfits can shed some light on it. You know, being the dirt track racer.
Yeah, that's
You
in
know,
his
I'm
wheelhouse
going
for
to tear
sure.
you down after the race. I'm going to protest it.
See, that's another one too. Let's say that this 318 went to fruition with all factory parts. There is no way on earth that I think that will get torn down publicly.
Yeah.
Because then what'll happen is you find one rod bolt in there that wasn't. Oh man, the internet would just go nuts with protest, right?
Yeah.
Somebody would complain about anything in that engine. So I don't know how you could possibly. What is this? The 675? Is that just a smog open chamber
It's, yeah.
318 head? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but here's the thing. Look at what Charlie is saying here. I know he's done the math. We're talking about with a 178 intake valve in this head, and that's how much flow he's getting. Think about that. We're already miles above where a 915 J head is at, 202 head. You know what I'm saying?
I think that what he's done would certainly outflow the X head. I
Oh
think
yeah, there's no doubt
because the X
that's
head
a
is
200. That's a 208, 210 CFM port
yeah,
all
right.
day long, even with the 202.
Well, here's the thing. That 202, there was probably some really smart engineer in the 60s that said, hey, man, there's old people going to be fighting to the death over these one day because we put an X on the side of them,
Oh yeah,
right? Then the TA cars, what did they use? A J head. They didn't.
yeah. Outfit says that the rules say stock, that means stock.
Well, that's yeah, Russell, but we just shown you that that's a wild
But if I want to
interpretation
run at the
there.
back of the pack versus running up front, what do I have to do with it? I Charlie, I cannot wait to see what those heads do on the IOP program and see how they fare as far as port energy and all that. I think it's going to be. Do you have an idea how big the port is, CC wise?
He says
I
they'll
don't.
need a lot of bigger heads. I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah,
I think that is probably the coolest part of all of this is seeing what those heads will do, because I don't think anybody's gone that far with a 318 head, a real 318 head.
I'm about willing to bet that.
Yeah, that
I'm
to
about
me
willing
is
to
the
bet
most
that.
interesting part about it.
He's saying it's small compared to most of. Yeah.
It's undoubtedly the best small block Mopar head with that size of valve there is. That head too would be awesome on a 273 because every 273 gets a ton of shrouding because the bore is so small.
Well, but didn't the 273 heads have the closed chambers so you can have decent compression?
I think they had. I think that the 67, the 69, 318, and 273 shared a head, and it was a small chamber. Could have been closed chamber, but it was a real small chamber head.
Yeah. Because I know that Tony's original bottle rocket motor had the closed chamber heads on it, if I remember right.
They had the early 318, 273 head. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, well,
Izzy, and BNR here. Andy, you got to head out for a bit.
I do. So it's halftime. I got to go pick my youngin' up from church. I will be back.
All
I'll see
right,
you here
guys. We'll hang
shortly.
out a bit. We'll hang out
Yeah.
a bit, and who knows? Andy may be back here in a bit. Should be. Steven says the 283 had 59cc chambers. Yeah, I like the 283. Yes, and Turbo Tom mentions the Blue Collar Keto Cook sub his channel. Yeah, Steve is a great guy. Go check out his channel. It's neat, and it's not an automotive channel, but he's a great guy. I'm subscribed to his channel too. I thought it would be fun to have a a live stream tonight and just talk about the differences in how people view stock, and they conflate the definition of words. I'm big into the definition of words and actually having basis in them. Like, I really don't like when the word issue replaced the word problem. And people use those synonymously. They'll actually replace problem with issue because maybe it sounds a little nicer, but they don't mean the same thing. You know, an issue is something that's to be debated. A problem is something that's objectively wrong. And I have a friend who said that came out of clinical psychology. They wanted to uh, try to label behavior as an issue instead of a problem. And that's where it came from. But we run into this thing where people will use stock in place of the word production like it means the same thing, and it doesn't. And so I think that really comes into play when we're setting the ground rules for this 318 project, this quest, this idea. You know, I think it matters. And I think that I have yet to see anybody, maybe with the exception of Servito, who's really willing to put the hours in going down that rabbit hole to see what that will do. And spend that money on those parts and all of that. And then see what you have at the end of it. Unfinished project says 202. Yes, it's 201 days, 2 hours, 58 minutes. Indeed it is. Clock in the calendar, wait for no one. Charlie says, I have issues. I get it. Unfinished project has put up the registration link for the No Name Nationals. Thanks a bunch, buddy. Oh, well, let's see, Lars did. I thought it was unfinished project. He's right above that. Yeah, Lars, thank you. I had unfinished project on my live stream last night. Don't get too excited and flee over there. You don't get to see him. NSB says, we helped a couple of circle track guys. They had to use a stock flywheel, but I guess the rules didn't say anything about the brake lathe to shave off. Yeah, exactly. So what is the rule? Is the rule production parts and then do what you want with them? Or does it have to be production spec? These are all different things. And I think Barrows, at the end of the day, is right, is that I think it's neat that you've got different people doing this in their own interpretation. And the viewers are the ones who are going to win from this, as they get to see several different takes on this. And then there's the Nelsons trying to conquer the world with a 4200 inline six. Right on. And Mexican spec is right, but again, that's just how diluted our language has become. Correct. I don't like when somebody says feel when they mean think. It's a disaster. Our English language is a disaster these days because it's become a mess and people don't value speaking it or understanding it right. So it is what it is. Yes, the 4200, like out of a Chevy Trailblazer. So if you haven't seen what Nivlac 57 channel is doing, Mr. Servito, you should go check it out. Those guys are doing some incredible stuff. Russell says that their total flywheel, clutch, and pressure plate has a minimum weight on it. I could see that. I would think for safety, that's a good idea. Oh my gosh, it's Ricky Jure. Glad you're in here, man. Calvin's in here. Says, we don't bite. No, they don't bite. They just run off and leave you on the last yellow. Calvin, how are things? We're having one of those very esoteric discussions of the merits of stock versus production and the rationale behind that. Andy Wood he needed to run out, take care of some stuff today. That came up this afternoon. He will be back a little bit later, but he'll be back. So if you got any things you want to corner Andy with and try to figure out, a little bit later will be the time to do it. This is an interesting one here. Mexican Spec sees all this unusual Mexican market stuff. In case you guys want to check it out, I have a video with 5 Mexican Ford Fairmonts, box top and wagons. There you go. Joe says that my phone died like a Chevy at the starting line. So Calvin says, I've always felt like the old stuff is probably built to a way higher standard as far as strength of materials, but the precision is probably lacking. Yeah, I would say specifically the evolution of castings has come a really long way. I mean, gosh, flip over a cylinder head from the 70s and one from the 90s. It's amazing the difference. And now what's come about with 3D printing is really impressive. Professor P is telling us about the 3D print stuff with aluminum and what they can do and making running changes in that. You couldn't do that with castings because of the expense. But now you can, at lunchtime, you can change the program and do that. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the line because of that technology. I can't make it precise, make it plenty strong. Right. So you can put more boost on it, right? I get it. This is interesting. Jay said, I've known of 3 Eagle cast cranks that have broken in 2, but have no fear from a 70s cast crank. Well, right on. Dust Devil has been at the Indy Swap. How's it been this year, sir? I did not get to make it this year. Yeah. And Jari says the machining is horrid, but they're thick. Right. Right. Well, if you look at it, that makes sense because of cost of materials then versus now. I got to say, I've been to the Indy Swap once, and that was last year, and it was really cool. Really different. So what do you guys think? I've seen this this whole 318 build idea. So you've got just Mopar Joe was wanting to do something with it. You've got Andy wanting to do his interpretation. You've got Jeff doing a 318 build, which will be what his customer wants to do. If you guys could choose and you wanted to do a small block Mopar, any small block Mopar, what would you guys do? You're choosing your own build. What would you do? Right. Right. And look at the core shift that you had back then, too. And that's obvious why they did that. Yeah, he's not kidding. I thought the prices were pretty decent last year at the Indy Swap. There were people there that actually wanted to sell stuff. I very much like the Underdog 318. I think it's a great experiment. I thought the idea is so worthy. I still do. It's just a huge amount of time commitment, and I get that. I get that. Scar says he would do a 273. It's nostalgic. Hey, I get that. I think that's cool. Well, film it. Film how you do it. I'd like to see it. Was on to 2B says, let the 318 build play out. It'll be the best iteration in the end for sure. We'll just see what happens. Dust Devil says he wants to see what a 318 with a 4-inch stroke would do. There's lots of those. It's 384 cubic inches on a stock bore. I'll tell you who's got that. Dust Devil is I don't know if he's still in here or not. Robert Magny. He built one of those for a D150 truck. And I understand it is a truck application, but still, he did a 318 stroke, and that's exactly what I want to do for the van. But right now, that 318 in the van's running great, so I don't want to touch anything for a good while. Joe says he would do a 13 to 1 360 aftermarket heads and a big old solid roller cam. Sounds like a great recipe to me. That would upset a lot of 408s. Well, look at the Nacho Cuda. It has something similar and does similar. Calvin says my favorite LS is the 4.8, so I'm a 318 guy too. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see the Nelsons do a 318. That would be interesting. Can't disappoint you if your expectations are low. I don't know. It is the internet. The internet. There are people on the internet that can have a problem with finding a $100 bill on the sidewalk. I mean, there's always somebody who won't like what you do. Oh, Tim, are you going to be in it? Are you going to build a 318 for that class? Practically have that now. I would say there's a chance that event has that 318 event that I went to in Alabama years back had a lot of 318s. No Name Nationals probably does too. You really add it up. Oh, without a doubt. That's what I want to do for the van. I want to do a 318 stroker. Well, you know what? Let's start filling up the classes we have, then we'll start splitting them up. What do you think, Stephen? Tell us how to get a 318 to be under 305 cubic inches and we're in. Andrew, I'll tell you exactly how. You use the I think it's a 2.96 inch stroke. And who is it that makes that crank? Jeff knows this because he just asked about it. There's a company that still makes a production style crankshaft for the 304 inch TA motors. And you can get that crank. And it's under 3-inch stroke. They are the same stroke, Dizzy. But yeah, it's 2 point, yeah. Yeah, right. It's 2.96 stroke, and they ran that on a 4.04 inch bore. It was 304 cubic inches, and it was for that TA class racing that they did in the E-bodies. And I wish Jeff was in here. That crank, he actually called around and found the manufacturer who made the crank, and they said, yes, we can still sell you one. It was a lot of money. I think it was a lot of money, but you can still get the crank. I wish I could remember offhand who it was, but he made the phone calls and found out. He found out who did it. You can still get it. Of course, you guys, I would think would. Well, the 273 just has a really small bore. That's the problem with that, because a 273 actually has the same stroke as both a 318 and a 340. It wasn't Butler, Dean. It was a 2.96 stroke, I believe. I wish I could remember. If Jeff pops in here, if you see him float through, ask him, because he actually did that. He was curious about it. Hello, Kevin's Rust and Clint Street Machines. Meant to holler at y'all when you came in. Moldex, I think you're right. I think that's who made it. Now that you say that. But he talked to them and they said, we don't have any on the shelf, but we can get you one for X. And it was a lot of money, but it's out there. Because we're working on a 302 LS actually, yeah. Dean Stevenson said Moldex supplied a number of crankshafts to Ford. Yeah, that was that name I couldn't think of. You got the maker right. It was a lot of money. I don't know. It wasn't as much as some of these billet cranks, but it wasn't far off either. The bore on a 273 is 3.63. It is tiny. In fact, you can't even run a 2-inch intake valve without notching the top of the bore. That's how small it is. Talk about shrouding. You have interference. They're great little happy engines, lightweight, have a wonderful rocker arm design. There's indirect connection, Jason. How you doing, sir? $323 for the win. Sure, that's a 30 over 318. Is that how many cubes your engine is, Levi? Is it 323? I'm curious what combination of LS might have that. Hey, it's 9:15 and Wendy is no longer at work. Usually we get that message at 9:30 on the dot. Lars put up the link for indirect connection. Indirect connection is in the No Name 500, and he is working toward getting his 500 subs. He's basically a spin-off channel from Rapid Transit Garage. So go check out Indirect Connection, see if you earned your sub. But you will recognize Jason. He's on that viral short that they did about, I think it was changing ball joints. Clinch Street Machines, I'm doing reasonably well, sir. Hope you are too. Looking more from the Bratthink. Paint Namer says 915 is a good cylinder head. Sure, it is. But again, it's a good cylinder head, but didn't come on a 318. Russell says, I'm planning a new 396 build, but it won't be what you think. Okay, that sounds exciting. Hot Rod Guy Garage is noting 202 days. Yeah, 201, 2 hours, 42 minutes. That is correct. Wendy there hitting her marks. Andrew says 302 cube LS should go 1,000 plus horsepower. Yeah, wow. I like the LS. I think it's great. I did an LS swap before they were fashionable, but I've only done one. And now it's just mundane. Tony's Hot Rod Garage says the Casper-Matic shirts are now available on his website, gunslingergraphics.com. Go check them out. Don't you like how StreamYard puts the little wrench there now? I can do this. They put the wrench after the mod. StreamYard hasn't done that until this week that I've noticed. And Lars put up the link here as well. Thank you, Lars. Appreciate that. So other than the debate about stock and production and modified and what direction you think a 318 build should go, what are you guys into? Calvin says, now we DLS swap stuff, taking the V8 out to put in what the SS secretly stands for, a straight 6. Right on. So, Calvin, what is the one car that you get the most head scratching on about people like, why did they do that? Which car of yours gets the most of that? The most, why did they do that looks? Looks stock but rocks. Okay, so now you're talking about the fast class, right? Looks stock but rocks. Of course, there's nothing stock in those things. They just look stock. That's another version of stock. It's more subjective than people realize. So, Stephen, how does your transmission work? And I saw you had a video up about doing the transmission. Mexican Spec, as of this stream, yes. Now they look like YouTube. As of last week, they didn't. I knew who my mods were, but on the StreamYard side, they all looked the same. And this week, now the mods show up in blue with a wrench on StreamYard too. You know, One-Eyed Cat gets the looks from the 5-barrel. Oh, I bet you do. Calvin says probably the Datsun. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 I can see that. Nothing stock under the valve covers, right? But again, I have seen a lot of people say, oh, it's stock. And then they actually get into the build and actually show pictures. You're like, there's nothing stock. And what are they talking about? Oh, well, it's stock except for this and that and the other. And that's practically stock. And it's just, that happens everywhere. Russell from Outfits calls the Nivlac 57 the Screaming Sixers. They are awesome. I agree. Hot Rod Guy Garage says stock appearing. Yeah, well, that's a thing. Yeah, Levi says he doesn't like people not working out the kinks in their drag cars before changing the combination. I see a lot of people change 3 things at a time, and then they can't figure out what doesn't work, so they change 3 more things, and they won't slow roll the changes in the testing enough to really know what's working, what's not, and why. Dust Devil says people keep asking for different classes at No Name Nationals. The trick is to collaborate with fellow YouTuber who thinks the same way and do a call out race. This is what call outs are for. Can I pin this like on my channel? Don't worry about another class. Get you a match race on with somebody. We'll make classes in responses to what people are actually doing. Why are you opening a hood for a cop? That's my better question for that, Charlie. Barrow's Garage says, I live by the golden rule. Numbers matching equals the numbers in your wallet. The rest is what it is. Big Block 402 Steven says, I need a match race against a tunnel ram duster. I would say that could happen. Levi, that's at every track everywhere. That's what that is. Cop thought the old work truck was stolen. Buff says, my hood is stuck closed for a cop who asks. The shotgun approach. Yeah, it's every track everywhere. Evans Mopar says, then there's the liars who plumb the nitrous system under their intakes and say that it's stock. Yeah, it patterns like a shotgun. That is right. Shotgun it with new parts. I've said that before. It's like the guy out in, parts store parking lot sitting there changing every electrical thing he can until it starts. It's like that. I have not either, Buff. I live a boring life.
I am back.
Andy's back. Now watch. Our viewers will be like, oh, man, now we can come back. No, we've been talking about all kinds of interesting things like the spray and pray method of shotgunning new parts and not testing things one at a time and all kinds of interesting stuff like that.
That sounds fun. Any questions while I was gone?
Yeah. Well, you guys got any hot seat questions for Andy?
Yeah, nitrous stock.
Buff is talking about roadside inspections in California. That's called a state where I don't want to live.
Exactly.
Where the Gestapo is stopping you and wanting to check under your head. Forget all that. Joe says Andy has a carburetor video up today. So did you get some 4150s and you're going to work out and test versus the Dominators?
750 versus 750, which is better? See, many people didn't realize that I have 750 Dominators. You know,
Right.
The 750 Dominator was something that I always seen as a poser carburetor, because that was born in the Pro Street days, you know. So I'm excited to see, because I think there's going to be a big difference. I might be wrong. I might be really wrong.
Andrew says that while you were gone, you volunteered to find him a 2.96-inch stroke small block Mopar crank. So Two Hacks Jeff has actually found he's got a contact at Moldex, and they said that they can get him that TA crank that's under 3-inch stroke. And so Jeff is the one you need to talk to about that, Andrew. Two Hacks Jeff.
That would be. I would love to build that combination.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Nobody does that. Mopar used to offer an not as cast. They used to offer a raw forging that was designed to be finished out between the 2.96-inch stroke or the 3.79, which was their max at the time.
Yeah.
And so you could get a forging that you could go the entire spectrum of those and turn it to whatever stroke you wanted.
That's cool stuff.
They used to be in their catalog. I thought it was pretty cool. I agree, BNR. Barrows has a question for you. Are you going to dyno the 318 with the 2-barrel, then put a 4-barrel carb adapter on it? I guess, or are you going to change the intake?
Going to change the intake.
Yeah, what would you get?
It would be cool to find a 4-barrel to a BBD pattern and just put a 4-barrel on top of that crappy intake.
You could make one. I mean,
it ain't worth all that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a lot of work. But yeah, I mean, even if you were trying to use aluminum and weld up one of the ones designed for a Holly, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Adrian Nelson priced out a 2.5-inch small block Chevy crank. 20 years later, he still has sticker shock. I bet.
I can imagine that being pricey.
Well, they make the 4 to 2
not like the pricey flat plane crank that DV has for small block 4.
Oh, I bet.
That we're going to put my D3 heads on at some point.
Yeah, they make a 4 to 2 adapter, but not for the BBD, right? They make a 4 to 2 adapter to go to the Holly. The Holly, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I have one of those, but it's for a Holly 2300, I think.
Yeah.
It's magical, isn't it, Russell? The 60s super stocks.
It really is, man.
Yeah.
There was something magical between that 67 to 72 era of drag racing, man, altogether, in my opinion.
We just can't do that today.
No.
All the conditions of the world were right to do it at the time.
Yeah. Back before there was really a true aftermarket.
Right.
No,
I love it. I think that was just some of the highest and best. And now we can't go back. Right. We can do cool things, but we can't go back to that. See, Unfinished Project knows how to keep stuff factory. You get another so you can leave the factory alone.
Yeah.
Now, Barrows is asking because he says he has a 318 poly and no way to get a 4-barrel intake for it. I thought you could get a 4-barrel intake for the
Oh
Poly.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Even the factory had 2 4-barrel options, didn't they?
I was thinking, but I don't know. I don't know enough about the
Yeah,
Poly.
they had it was like a 290 horse version of the Poly.
I was thinking so. Paint Namer says that Wind made one.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've seen one. People want a mint for them. Well, you said that wasn't made. Now you're just saying people want a mint for them. Well, that's two different things.
Yeah.
An iron and aluminum 2 4-barrel intake for the Poly. Yeah, now we're talking. Speaking of that, I found an interesting picture since we're talking about that very thing. You'll like this picture, Andy. Move that comment so you can see it.
Oh yeah.
There's DV and the late
Yeah.
Marvin Burke, and they're there with my that's my Offenhauser 2 4-barrel for an old style Hemi.
Yep. I remember that very well.
Yep. And I'll tell you, what were DV's thoughts? He's like, well, you can completely re-engineer this thing and make it a whole lot better, which you could.
That's the way he thinks.
It's the way you think. If you watch this conversation, you know a whole lot about the 318 thing just watching that conversation.
Yes.
But it's good stuff. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was great. Okay, so Andrew Nelson's wondering, I'm going to out him right now. He's a closet Mopar guy.
Actually, yeah. I have a very soft spot for Mopars. Hang on. Well, I can't do
I
the
can find
John
that
Wooden.
picture.
No, yeah, find a picture or find the short that I put up of the Duster running.
I was going to say, I probably, without too much trouble, I don't know if I can or not, maybe. I've got proof that Andy is originally a Mopar guy.
I put a short up on my channel of a video on early VHS of the Duster. But actually, I'm an engine guy.
I have a picture, and I don't know. Did you ever put it up on your community tab? I got a picture of a teenage Andy Wood with his 340 Duster.
Man, I had just Mopar Joe hair too, didn't I?
Oh yeah, I had the hair going on.
Yeah.
There's a picture somewhere floating around here. I'm going to find it one of these days. Of I've got some old ones of me building some engines. They're instant photos. Remember, you took with the Polaroid and they developed.
Oh, yeah.
I've got some of those. I want to stick them on my community tab when I find them. Might be hard to convince people it's actually me in the photo. They're so old, but
hey,
how it goes.
I can relate.
Max Wedge, Dick Dastardly have a soft spot between my ears for Mopar. Yeah.
Hey, talk about that video of the spacers. That was the coolest thing I've seen in a long time. Okay.
Yeah. So Max Wedge, Dick Dastardly was in a chat and he was talking about how many carburetor spacers he has. And I said, you should put all of them on your cross ram and go do a burnout. And he did exactly that. He put every spacer he had on his cross ram in his 63 Plymouth 426 Max Wedge car and goes out and does a burnout in the neighborhood.
And they were all mismatched spacers and everything.
Yes. Go watch it on his channel. If one of the mods could put the link up to that, it was the last short, I think, that Max Wedge, Dick Dastardly put up. Joe's just saying that his friend Michael Yielding, he says, You want to see my vote for the 28-10-5 class for 2024? He needs the subs to get there.
Heck yeah. That was a pretty looking radical ride.
Well, yeah, Max Wedge's car is that blue Plymouth.
No, I was talking about just Mopar Joe.
Well, all of them actually.
Oh yeah, they all are.
Joe's car came out in force. So there's a good chance. I'm gonna do a video, do a live stream with Joe at some point this year, and we're going to talk about a lot of interesting stuff regarding Joe's 512, because it was a journey throughout the year. We're going to do the whole behind the scenes of that, and I think people will find it interesting. Unfinished Projects got the short link right here. Check that out. He said it looked so wrong, but it was fun and cool.
But it felt so right.
Yeah, it was fun and cool. Hey, you don't even have any haters yet, do you, Max Wedge? You might get a hater over. You never know.
They don't want to mess with the cartel. No.
No, don't mess with the Cross Ram cartel. You might wake up with fuel injection for messing with those guys.
Oh.
Hey, there's Michael Yielding. So I watched a short of his car, and that's let me tell you, that thing's not fooling around.
It's rowdy.
Yeah. I think that he could really set the class on its ear, and I'd like to see him turn out.
I would too.
Yep.
I actually wish I could find my old Duster. At some point, I do think that's going to happen in my life.
Andy liked that Duster enough that he's told me that'd be the only thing he'd ever sell Casper to own.
It would be gone tomorrow.
Ooh.
I mean, if I can find that car.
You are exactly right, Charlie. Oh, I guarantee you that we have about 60 people watching. I'm sure there's a few of them who will report to Uncle Brian, but that's okay.
Hey.
Just Mopar Joe says that Michael gives me takeoff parts after he outgrows them. Joe has a sweet gig with that. He gets the parts that Michael Yielding outgrows. He gets the parts that Just Mopar Drew outgrows. Joe's got it figured out.
Yeah, he's in the supply chain.
Speaking of Just Mopar Drew ordered the Cope Racing Transmissions catalog and built a sweet piece, and Joe's got some good overflow from that, so I think it's cool. I think it's great. Lee says that watching Michael videos is going to make me start looking for a Hemi. I think Michael is Hemi hunting himself. That's what I think. SB is on like Donkey Kong, Just Mopar Joe. Yeah. I will say that the 28-10-5 so far, the ET record is 552, 551, 552. Andrew Nelson there has run top speed of the No Name Nationals, I think at 127. So I wouldn't mind seeing those go lower this year. Will there even be another Hemi to compete? Oh, yeah, I would say there will be another Hemi, but maybe not another second generation Hemi. In other words, real Hemi, right?
Now, explain that to me, you Mopar guys. Y'all don't count the third gen as a Hemi?
Yeah, tell us what you think about that, because I don't know anything about the third gen Hemi. I've never worked with one, nothing. So what are your thoughts on that? Because there's a lot of third gen. Now, where's Polito when you need him?
Now I can see y'all not claiming the 4.7 because really that's kind of a mod motor in sheep's clothing. But the Hemi, come on.
Yeah, Michael, Redbeard is coming along on his. What say you? Andrew Nelson says, "Oh my beer." Andrew, do you
Hey,
need a
y'all
link?
watch this.
Do you want a link? I'll get it to you right now. Seriously, let me know. Professor P. See, I mentioned third gen. I mentioned third
And
gen Hemi.
he
Professor P.
magically
Did
pops
whoa,
up.
his ears started burning.
Well, he brought up something on a live that I thought was very interesting. I think we're to a point year-wise now, it's becoming more cost-effective to do a third gen compared to an all-out LA small block.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, definitely, definitely. We have passed that point.
Shane, don't apologize. I just had to go pick my kid up.
Understood, Professor P. We're just saying it came up, so the offer is there. Max Wedge Dick Dastardly says, I'm going to Max Wedge Heaven Sunday. My buddies, Edelbrock's as far as the eye can see. Okay. My first 4-barrel was an Edelbrock AVS. That was a fun deal every day for a while, coming home from school, trying to get that thing to work just right. And then in college, I went to a Holly 4150 and never looked back. Yeah, Mopar Al 57. There's lots of guys doing third gen Hemi stuff.
Yeah. Now, see, I will agree with that statement.
What, Lee's a third gen is a Hemi, just not the Hemi?
The Hemi.
Oh, I would agree with that too.
I mean, you got the baby Hemi, then you got the real Hemi, and then you got whatever you want to call the third one. Like party.
Right. Yeah. Well, people call them the old gen Hemi and the third gen. If you ever notice, people will say the old style Hemis and they'll say the third gen Hemis, but when they say the Hemi, they always mean the second gen Hemi.
You're exactly right.
Like people that like that term second gen Hemi isn't a thing for a reason.
That's
because
right.
people still think of it as the Hemi. So, not asking you to name names or putting you on the spot, but I'm sure that Andy Wood has got some call outs rolling around in his mind for the 3rd annual No Name Nationals.
Oh.
And you can hatch that later on your channel if you want, but that's got to be in your mind somewhere.
Once, now here's the thing. I know that that's funny. I don't care who you are.
Yeah,
I don't care who you are. That's funny.
Cracking me up. If there's a sandal on the accelerator pedal, you are correct.
Hey, watch it now. Watch it.
I know you like your shorts and sandals and boonie hat.
Yeah. But no, I would like to. I definitely would love to get a hold of Dallas. You know what I'm saying? But I would have to have nitrous. And I would love to run beside Shane. I'd definitely need a lot of nitrous for that. Still wouldn't have. I'd taken a knife to a gunfight. I don't know, man. I still have call outs from the first No Name Nationals that I probably need to wrap up.
Well, so here's the thing. For people who are high on the food chain and everybody wants a piece of, And Just Mopar Joe is one of those guys, and Andy Wood is one of those guys.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely got to get some of the pink, purple Barracuda, the fish thing, the
Now,
wheelchair.
yeah. My thought is that just lay back, wait till a little later in the season, till there's a reasonable amount of time left in the season, and then you guys call your shots who you want to run, because everybody wants to run Andy and everybody wants to run Joe. And nobody wants to run Redbeard for a reason. But that's a very complimentary reason.
Yeah. I need 3 cars in the hit.
Right.
4 cars in the hit.
Right. But no, I bet you that you've got some things in mind.
You know what, man? Honestly.
Ooh.
Oh, whoa.
Shots fired.
I like what's coming together here.
Redbeard. You better be rolling. Yeah, Redbeard holds the belt.
Like the A-team. I love it when a plan comes together.
So Michael Yielding, here's the thing. You're 498 subs and a 552 away from resetting the record at the AHRA No Name Nationals.
Actually, I do have an official call out. I'm going to make it right now. And that's going to be Steven. I want some of the 489 big block Chevy. I think that will be a killer deal.
That would, and that would look great too.
That's exactly what I'm thinking, man.
Look great together.
Candy Cane, I love that truck. I love what he's doing with it. I'll have to get my picture made laying down beside the Candy Cane drive shaft.
I mean, there's some pictures we want to see, but we know won't happen. That one we will.
Tunnel Ram Showdown.
Well, Levi, I'm telling you. So, Yielding is saying, coming for you, Daniel. You want some of that action, Levi?
Make it happen, Captain.
Get your Tunnel Ram Mafia t-shirt. And I don't know if you're wearing it at the minute, Andy, but that t-shirt it just looks amazing. What Tony did with that shirt.
I love it.
It's the colors and contrast and graphics look amazing. And Andy has the second one, and I have the first one.
That is a true story.
So one of these days we'll cross the streams and Andy and I will be together and each wearing the same shirt.
Yep.
That'll be a weird trivia.
Number 1 and number 2.
That's it.
I actually think I'm wearing the Casper shirt now that I think about it. Maybe. I don't know.
Levi says he's going to need 1,000 pounds off to be at that level. Yeah.
If you need to lose 1,000, I need to lose 2,000.
Yeah, Big Block 402, I could almost figure it out because the day that Andy and Tony launched those, you were the first purchase, but I got one, I think, before they were even offered to the public. Well, I know I did. I got the first one to come off the press.
So we're the first 3, probably, most likely.
Probably so.
Tony could tell us that.
Tony would know. And speaking of that, Tony will be live here in 11 minutes. So we'll hand off to Tony here in a few. Joe says, Levi, Michael will bring the full Mopar on you. I'm scared to burn out by him. Redbeard says Jaron Long is going to be fast as well, and he just got his 500. He's not registered yet, Redbeard, but if he does, I'll be on the lookout for it. Michael Yielding says, Levi, it's stock frame rails, steel roof and quarters, steel doors, factory firewall and engine location.
All glass, baby.
Yeah, cool. Great. Tony confirms his claim before it was public. Speaking of that, T says he could pick up a couple hundredths dropping weight on the car, but T is our defending bracket champion. So we got a few minutes left. This was interesting last time I asked. Andy, who do you think is going to win bracket this year? Is it going to be our inaugural bracket champion, just Mopar Joe? Will T defend his crown 2 years in a row? Or will we have a third channel make it 3 different winners in 3 different years for the Friday bracket at the No Name Nationals?
What about 318 will run?
He could be. He could be.
Because he is a serious contender.
It could be. It could be Tim.
Tim, man, the thing about it is, as the No Name progresses, the competition is going to get stiffer and stiffer every year.
Barrows is agreeing with you. I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah.
So Redbeard is saying your challenge is going to be getting your 500 there, Michael. Danny Boyd says a different channel will take it.
Yeah.
T bets on himself. Yeah.
Hey, that's why we race, baby. You know?
Yep. So Mopar Joe says T can win first day. That he lets me slip away with it second day. Well, we'll see what happens.
202 days, you can do it.
201 days, 2 hours, 8 minutes.
Bingo.
Michael says, I got a long way to 500. Well, there you go. But I'll tell you what, it goes quick. And when you car like that, that'll get a lot of eyes on you. A lot of shares. It'll go quick. And he says, if I get there, you know what's coming. So if you guys want to see a real threat on the 28-10-5 class, go check out Michael Yielding's channel.
Yeah.
And, if one of the mods would put up the link for that again, I'd appreciate it. And see what happens. Charlie's out catching some sleep. Yeah, we're going to be wrapping up here in just a few minutes and handing off to Tony's Hot Rod Garage. She goes live right after me.
Talking about losing weight. So David gave me some motivation. Okay. He said, for every 9 pounds I lose is the equal to adding 1 horsepower. So that's my game plan. Hopefully when I'm at No Name this year, you won't recognize me.
Right on. Right on. Well, we'll recognize you. You'll still be Casper's keeper.
Oh, yeah. So he's at 55 subs. Okay.
Michael had 2 subscribers 2 hours ago. So he has really put the word out. Like, I guess he probably got a shout out from Joe. That probably would do that. But that does show you how quickly that happens. There you go.
I'll definitely sub after this is over with.
Danny Boy, by the way, everybody's on a diet. The question's what's in your diet.
Yeah.
We all need a diet to live. The question's what's in it.
For those of y'all who don't know, my brother's got a keto channel, and that's the way I'm going.
Yes. You're welcome, man. Hey, and good luck. And it goes quick. And just so I'll tell you, since you are a newcomer to the whole No Name 500 community, the way it works is the idea is by the time you get 500 subscribers sharing your content and interacting with all the YouTubers, you get to know all these people. You won't need to ask a single name when you get there because you'll recognize these people. That's the point of it. And that is this experience.
It's really one of the coolest events ever. And I'm not just saying that. I've been to many different types of drag races, but that was just something special. Big Mike has lost a lot of weight.
Big Mike's doing carnivore. Yeah.
Yes.
Old McDonald is on the seafood diet.
Well, I was on that for way too long.
Cut out wheat and you will lose weight. Let me tell you, a life without pasta is like a life without sunshine. I know. Isn't that cruel to even
It
say?
is cruel, man. It was really cruel.
Yeah, usually there are a few things you can really get people off on a tangent on this channel. You talk about food, music. That's two things you can always get them going on.
Yeah. Well,
Dizzy's the 59th sub. Yeah, look at that. That was a quick jump start.
yes.
And Big Lock 402 says J Longtime 20 has his subs now. If he hasn't registered, he will. That's another 572 dark coming to No Name Nationals
What?
2024. We're going to have at least 3 cars that are 572s and bigger, but they got to register. So we'll
I
see what
seen a
happens.
post on. I seen a post on my Cleveland video today.
High five. And what's stock? Yeah.
Yeah, and what stock in 318? But it said it only took one Ford to beat 100 Chevrolets. Bob Glidden.
Yeah. Yeah. But those days are gone now.
I know.
Pro stock is Camaro. It's Camaro looking eliminator. You know, I mean, they're gone. What can you say? They're gone.
It's all Motor Pro Mod. That's what you might as well call it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
You know, it's all Motor Pro Mod.
That's a very good point. Yep, a life without pasta is like a life driving a Ford. Yeah, I could agree with that. That's about what that would be like right there.
That's rough, man.
How about How about a life without pasta is like driving a Ford from 1986, and you can only use OE parts.
We're talking a tempo, or what are we talking here?
Okay, I won't be that cruel to you. Okay, because
That's pretty
tempo is
cool.
like you got to live without one arm. This is like Family Guy. Would you rather? Okay,
Would
so
you rather?
it's not tempo cruel, but we're not going to make it F-150 easy for you either.
Give me the other Fox body.
Okay, let's make it the LTD. Let's make it the LTD from
Yes,
86,
the
the 80s model LTD.
Yeah.
There you go. I can't make it as fun as Micah's wagon now. Can't do that.
No.
That's too easy. So all of you big motor guys, we're looking for your registrations to come through. And I will say, when you register, please make a video and tell people you've registered. Tag me on it. I'll share it out. Let people know. As I leave it on the creators to tell people, hey, we're registered, we're coming, this is what we're doing. Yeah, Outfit says 185 horsepower, 460 dually is what I have from 1985. That's right.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah, and Big Block 402, he messaged Jaron to register. Yeah, cool. Right. Yeah, speaking of that, I at work today, I ran into one of my friends that works at a diesel shop, and he was telling me they get those Ford trucks in all the time to do the EGR, to lead the head gaskets and all that.
Yeah.
On those 6.0s, 6.4s. It's like a 3-day job. One whole entire day to tear it down, and one day to do the swap, and another they got to take the cab off the truck to do it. It's a huge job.
The 6.0 is not really that bad once you do everything to it. But I mean, it's still polishing a turd.
I hear that. Does anybody have any last minute anything for Andy? Because we're going to wrap it up and hand off to Tony's Hot Rod Garage. He goes live right after us. Does anybody have any last thoughts?
I want to thank you for having me on. I'm sorry that I had to bail out for a few minutes, but that's just the way it
Oh,
works
no.
out.
Hey, man, family comes first. We're glad to have you. This has been a lot of fun exploring the topic of what is stock, what is factory.
I don't think we really made any headway. I think we're still in the bottom of the rabbit hole.
Yeah. And
I
Professor P says just give him a call.
I sure will.
No radios in this class. Okay, what are we trying? Redbeard is negotiating some terms here.
I love it. I love it. I want to see some big motor action at No Name Nationals.
Let's see some competition in heads up this year. We saw good competition last year, but a lot of breakage problems kept the fastest cars out.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. It was great to watch, but it's time for somebody to threaten that record of Redbeards. And I am and listen, as the house, so to speak, I'm just as happy to see Redbeard make his own new record as anybody else. I mean, hey, whoever wants it and whoever earns it, I'm good with all of it, right?
Absolutely.
Guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Tony will be just a few minutes. He just messaged me and let me know he's running a few behind, but he's going live right after us. So I will see you guys next week. I'll give a quick reminder that on Friday, March 29th, the last Friday in March, we're having a live stream dedicated to explaining what is the No Name Nationals. We'll talk all about all of the things, any of those type questions. What is it? What do I do? How do I register? All of this stuff. We're going to have guests on to tell you about their experiences and that kind of thing. And so if you're somebody out there who doesn't know whether or not that or if you know somebody who says, is it an event I want to go to or whatnot, that's the info live for them. Not that they're not welcome in any of these, which they certainly are, and they get to mingle with the community any Friday or on these other live streams they want to. That's fine. But that one on Friday, March 29th is going to be specially made just for folks who want to know more about the No Name Nationals, the event itself. That's the one to come to. So I'll plug that.
I will be there.
And with that, we will see you guys next week. Thank you all for turning out.